Hello, everybody, and welcome to Red Wings Daily, presented to you by FanArch. I'm your host, Kirk MckNight, author of The Voices of Hockey, Broadcasters Reflect on the Fastest Game on Earth, and coming to you from the southwest corner of Washington State, 2,454 miles from Little Caesars Arena. Now, the Red Wings were not at LCA last night. They were north of the border, taking on the Ottawa Senators for the first of 4 meetings this season. Let's hope the next 3 happen as well as the last one did last night, with the Red Wings winning 5-3 on the road to snap that 2-game losing streak, that was at the hands of the Pittsburgh Penguins, both away and at home at Little Caesars Arena. One thing that the Red Wings sort of improved on last night was the shots on net. They went from 12 on Saturday to 20 last night. Only other problem is that they were almost doubled those shots against them, which means that Gibby had quite the work cut out for him last night. He still managed to get 35 saves out of his 38. Only 3 got past him. Red Wings luckily put 3 goals in the net in the first period, including a goal with 17 seconds left by JVR. Now that is one of those things that really rubs the salt in the wound for a team that's already in a deficit. Sometimes when they're in the period like that, they're like, let us just get to the locker room, let us reset whatever we can. But then something like that happens where they throw another one on top of you and extend that deficit even more. It's probably really good cannon fodder for the coaches going into that locker room. I'll bet they'd rather it didn't happen, but it's definitely more of an excuse for them to just really lay into the team. And that's probably what happened last night. I actually saw JVR score with less than 30 seconds to go in the second period when I was up in Seattle watching the Red Wings take on the Kraken. So those kinds of goals late in the period like that, always something that mystify and really kind of get into your head as a player, and it gives you 18 minutes to really just sit there and stew and simmer over it. So Gibby, like I said, made 35 saves. So that was win number 10 in his last 12 starts. Great to go. Speaking of the special teams, there was a lot of penalty minutes between these two teams, considering the Red Wings only had 4 and the Penguins only had 4 in the last game that the Red Wings played. But last night, there were 6 power plays for the Senators. They were successful on 1, so the Red Wings were only 5 out of 6 on the penalty kill. Not bad, about 84% more or less. But one thing that they did do was replace their divot. And I love it when a player or a line or whatever will replace their divot. So they did give up a power play goal to the Senators, but guess what? During one of the other power plays the Senators had, we had a shorthanded goal, and I believe that was Big Raz that scored the shorthanded goal, basically a little over halfway into the third period to really pad that lead back up once again. The Senators had made it 4-3 because of Brady Tkachuk, but that goal by Big Raz putting it to a 5-3 deficit. There was another goal. There was 2 goals that are actually called back last night. The first was in the first period where the Senators thought they had a 1-0 lead. That goal called back, but again in the late in the game, I think with the score 5-3, the Senators scored a goal, but it was called back for goalie interference. Gibby actually was calling it right there on the spot, like, yeah, there's no way. He was looking right to the refs after the puck went across the goal line, saying there's no way this one's going to hold up. Seasoned veteran like Gibby will know when a call can go that way or not. So other notes from last night's game, Kopp had his second goal in 3 games. One of the other things is Larkin, as Larkin and DeBrincat seem to like, one will take the other by a nose, like in a horse race, the gallop. If you can picture the horses as they're rearing back their heads, they maybe not be in syncopation with each other. And one goes ahead by a nose, and then the next stride, the other one goes ahead by a nose. That seems to be what Larkin and DeBrincat are doing right now, because DeBrincat got a goal in last game to go up 22-21 over Larkin for the team lead, and last night, Larkin got 22 against the Senators. So those two are looking like a solid duo. It really seems like they might be, the Red Wings might have 2 40-goal scorers in a season, and that would be absolutely fantastic. Reminds me of the days of, well, I wasn't alive then, but watched enough tape on it. And when the New York Yankees, switching games over to baseball, the New York Yankees had Mickey Mantle and Roger Maris in '61. That's the year that Roger Maris hit 61 home runs, and Mickey had about I think 54, maybe 58. I'm not sure, but yeah, it was. They were called the M&M boys, and you know, I don't know what we call it, what we would do, Larkson to Brinket. I don't know what kind of clever name we could come up with those, but they're, you know, U.S. born team, U.S. born tandem, just like Kane and DeBrinket. So I don't know, figure something out there. But still, Larkin is not going to let DeBrinket get too far ahead of him. He's not going to let the horse you know, stretch it out a little bit in the home stretch and take more than a length lead against him. These are all horse racing terminology, folks, not necessarily hockey. I'm skipping sports a lot today, but stay with me. So it being Tuesday, it's time for Tantrum Tuesday, and part of Tantrum Tuesday is sometimes looking outside of Detroit for a moment in which a fight perhaps breaks out. Well, last night is a great example of why hockey is so wonderful. Now, I know I've gotten a little bit on a soapbox in times talking about how I don't like it when players use sticks to slash or to really take their aggressions out on other players. And I even said that I wasn't all about the whole sucker punch of Logan Stanley against Brady Tkachuk the other night. I get it. This is hockey, you know, and this is why I love hockey. So I might seem a little bit like a hypocrite in saying this is why hockey is so wonderful. But last night in the Anaheim Ducks Washington Capitals game, let's just lay it out right now. The Capitals destroyed the Ducks 7-4. Ovechkin got 2 more goals. So I believe he's sitting at 914 on his career. Are you serious right now? But let's go back to the game here. So Brandon Duhaime and Jacob Trouba. This is shortly after the Ducks score their first goal, opened the scoring last night. I think about 6 minutes in the first period. Well, Trouba and Duhaime, basically as the whistle sounds, you know, after the goal to start play again, those two are right at it. And this was something that was foreseen to be happening. These are two teams that only face each other twice throughout the year. It's an East Coast and West Coast team. And I was trying to find some kind of like trace back because Trouba used to be in the Metropolitan Conference when he played with the Rangers, and obviously the Capitals are part of the Metropolitan Conference or division. But I was sitting there thinking, okay, maybe there's some kind of tie-in here. But no, I didn't have to go back to last year when he was playing with the Rangers. This is fresh revenge. Trouba laid into Ryan Leonard when the game was in Anaheim, and I mean it was a lowered shoulder, just straight up tough hit, and Leonard went down and couldn't get off on the ice. I don't think on his own will. He had to be helped. Pretty sure he got a little injured on that one. And Duhaime, obviously with everybody's mindset on it, well, that fight well anticipated, and it took place. There wasn't going to be any other game after this unless it's for the Stanley Cup final between these two, because obviously they already played. This was the second of 2 between them, and it was a beautiful moment. The two were just fighting. It was one of those fights that just drug on so long that the players sit there and slap their sticks against the ice. I always love it when the players do that during a fight. You know, the refs are doing whatever they can to break it up, but the players, instead of trying to, you know, help the refs and breaking apart the scrum themselves, they're too busy giving the nod by way of the slap of the stick salute. So that was happening last night. Pretty interesting game, but yeah, revenge was definitely exacted. It was a long-lasting fight. It was one of the beauties. They'll probably have it on the sports shows today, probably talking about it a lot. Obviously, when it gets that much attention, that's the thing I don't like about it. Then the league officials start to look a little bit more into it, and then they start laying down, you know, closer supervision, get it under the magnifying glass a little bit more, and we don't want that either. So, beautiful moment for Tantrum Tuesday. Even though it didn't take place in Detroit, it's beautiful to be as a spectator in a game that means nothing to the Red Wings because neither of those two teams are in their division, and it's just good theater in a hockey game. Well, now that we're to the Chutes and Ladders segment, it's really simple, folks. The Red Wings are back in first because practically the rest of the Atlantic Division, the only other team that was playing in the Atlantic Division was the Senators. And as a result of their loss, they basically fell into the cellar with Toronto for last place. So the Atlantic Division is still going to continue to be competitive, but you're going to see with the very few points separating first and last. You're always going to see quite a shift every time we bring up chutes and ladders, or from week to week. If one team loses one more in a row than they're used to, or another team continues on their hot streak, you're going to see these leapfrogs happening. Now, the Red Wings leapfrog the Tampa Bay Lightning, who are idle, but the Lightning have 3 games in hand with the Red Wings. The Canadiens are 2 points back of the Red Wings, and I think they have 2 games in hand. So the Red Wings have a couple of days off before they play Vancouver on Thursday. So in that time, we may see a couple of leapfrogs happening. We may end up being third without having even played a game because of maybe 1 to 2 games being played by these idle teams while the Red Wings are idle. So we'll just have to see how it happens. But, it's more than halfway into the season. The Buffalo Sabres, having lost a game after winning 10 in a row, basically are back out of playoff contention right now. They're not sitting in the wild card spot anymore. Those 2 wild card spots are reserved for the 2 Pennsylvania teams, I should say, Philadelphia and Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh's been on a bit of a streak to kind of bring their playoff hopes back alive. But like I said, Red Wings are in first right now, so we'll see how that pans out over the next 2 or 3 games, or 2 or 3 days before they return to ice at Little Caesars Arena on Thursday against the Vancouver Canucks. So the final section of today's show is going to be reserved for, that's right, Aljo. Albert Johansson got an assist in last night's game for, I think it was JVR's goal. In fact, Bernard Docker, another player we have not talked about in the spotlight, one who's kind of really, under the radar. But yeah, so Johansson, Bernard Docker were both helpers in one of the goals last night. Just a little bit about Johansson. That was his 6th point of the season, so he's pretty quiet this year. But he's, he averages about 13 to 15 minutes of time on the ice each game. So, I mean, it's not like he's completely absent. But he's kind of stuck in there, and he was basically in the 2019 NHL entry draft. He was a second round, 60th pick overall in the second round. So he's kind of one of those quiet players. You're going to hear his name, in the action, whether it be a pass or whatever. He's got a decent amount of blocks and hits, not team lead or anything like that, but, better than a lot of the superstars as far as, getting gritty and getting in there. And that's really what his job is. When you see a player only have 6 points, but you see, time on the ice up at 15 minutes with only 6 points, he has his other duties out there on the ice and other things that he's in there to do. And so, like I said, kind of a silent killer. Definitely worthy of the spotlight, the fact that he was able to get an assist on one of last night's goals. So it's going to be a couple of days off for the Red Wings. Hopefully a little bit of time for McClellan to maybe address a couple of the situations that may be still lingering for the Red Wings. Perhaps getting a few more shots on goal in a game. I mean, it's obviously easy to take an exhalation after a game and kind of breathe and say, at least we won the game. But still, there's 32 shots on goal in 120 minutes of action. That is not good. That's basically 1 shot every 4 minutes. That will not fly when you start to get into the dog days of the season. You start to play teams in your division, especially the more competitive teams, another 1 or 2 times. I think they still got 2 more games against the Lightning. They got 1 more against the Maple Leafs. They got 1 more against the Sabres. They got 3 more against the Senators. Probably 2 more against the Bruins, if I'm not mistaken. I think they've only played the Canadiens once, so I'm sure they've got at least 2. They might even have 3. So these are all games that are going to start to really add up. So when you're not putting that many shots on goal, you've got to change things up and turn it around. So hopefully they can, over these next 2 days, figure out a way that they can get deeper into the other team's zone, get more open when it comes to getting the shots on goal. And let's see how it pans out when they host the Vancouver Canucks. This has been Red Wings Daily. Again, I am your host, Kirk MckNight, LGRW from the PNW.